Hey, I'm making my own way, but I stumble and I falter every day. But I love my baby now. But I love my baby, I'm still learning how. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Stay with me. We'll beat these
Good evening. I'm Alicia Connors-Bauer with Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance. Welcome to this evening's Pathways to Parenting show on bullying and the bullied. With me this evening is Emma Graham, a student at Boulder High School with the Boulder Youth Body Alliance. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do this evening is we had an additional panelist who unfortunately couldn't make it due to a family emergency. So Emma and I are going to do the best we can this evening. And we have a PowerPoint slide that we will be sharing with you in a little bit. What I'd like to do is ask Emma to tell us a little bit about Boulder Youth Body Alliance and how you got involved.
Hi, so I'm part of Boulder Youth Body Alliance, and this is my first year doing it. I first got involved through it by my therapist of my own eating disorder told me about it. A lot of other kids find out about it through the presentations that we do in school and stuff like that. So basically, we're a group of peer educators that go around to schools and give presentations about eating disorders and kind of what that sprouts from and the importance of realizing that. And we work to inspire positive body image and positivity of your body.
Great, thank you so much. I also believe we have joining us this evening is Emily. Emily, so sorry. And so what we're going to do is I will give Emily a chance. You can have this right there. While we get Emily set up with a mic, we will go ahead and start our presentation.
All right.
So why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. I am Emily Lauterbach from Longmont High for the Restorative Justice team, and I lead the Restorative Justice team on the on our leadership forum group, and I've put in a lot of hours. I'm community member trained and facilitator trained.
Great. Great. I think that's awesome. I'm pleased to say that we have two students with us this evening because I think that will bring a different perspective as we move forward and as our conversation continues. So I'd like to start with our PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll go back and forth to the students that we have with us and ask them for their opinions about what we're talking about. So first up, in our slide, I wanted to share with you the numbers that we have nationally. And so this comes from the 2011 Youth Risk Behavior Survey that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention conduct. And what this basically tells us is that 1 out of every 5, or 20% of students, have been bullied on school property. 16.2% have been bullied electronically. When we go to the next slide and look at what's happening in Boulder County, we see that in high school, 26.6% of high school students have been harassed on school property, 17.8% have been electronically bullied, 13.1% have been harassed because of weight, size, or physical appearance, 4.1% didn't go to school because they felt unsafe. And this is from the Boulder County Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we also survey Boulder Valley School District 7th and 8th graders, where we found that basically 30% have been bullied on school property, and 18.6% have been electronically bullied. Emma, one of the things that I find interesting is there's been a recent change in a policy of Boulder Valley School District policy that includes physical characteristics as part of the discrimination statement for the school district. Can you tell us a little bit about BYBA's role in getting that changed?
Yeah. So the Boulder Youth Body Alliance has been working for several years. They did a lot of research in the beginning, finding other districts that had this policy added to their discrimination policy. And we finally got it passed this year, which is really exciting. I think it's a really important policy because physical appearance is something just as important as sexual orientation or race or gender to be protected, because it's something that you can't change. And I think it's a really important thing that kids feel safe when they walk into school and that they have a safe environment to learn, and I think that they'll find their best education that way.
Great, thank you. So, Emily, I'm wondering, when you hear the numbers that we were just talking about, is that something you see in the work that you do?
It is. We deal with a lot of cases, and since our teams, we have a student-led team, which is what I am on. We see a lot of it every day, and it really impacts us. Not just because we're in them, but because it happens in our own district, in our own schools, and that's our whole goal, is to try to prevent it so people can feel safer and so that our community is safer.
Thank you. So on our next slide, speaking of our community and our students feeling safe, this information came from a statewide blueprint for bullying prevention. So the impact in Colorado, youth who were bullied were twice as likely to report being sad for more than 2 weeks in the previous year, more likely to have been in fights, engage in binge drinking, and use marijuana, and 1 out of 4 report attempting suicide in the previous year. So when we talk about bullying, this definition came from Olweis in 1991, where a person who's being bullied or victimized is when he or she is exposed repeatedly and over time to negative actions on the part of one or more persons. And as I was looking through the research, I realized that the definitions have been fine-tuned somewhat, but that essential definition still holds true, so that when you look at the key elements of bullying, that there's an imbalance of power, so that it can be physical, psychological, or intellectual, and it keeps the victim from defending his or herself. It's repeated, so that the negative actions are usually, although not always, occur repetitively over a period of time. And it's intentional. Bullies purposely choose actions which will hurt or intimidate the targeted victim. And there's unequal levels of effect, which is that the bully will usually display unusually high levels of victims will display high levels of emotional distress, while the bully demonstrates little emotion. And the bully is likely to blame the victim for the aggressive act or state that he or she deserved it. I wanted to ask you, Emily, in the work that you do with cases in your schools, how do you work with students who've been bullied?
So we have a process, and it's a circle. And in the circle, we generally have a facilitator and a co-facilitator who will have met with both of any people who are part of the circle who were referred to the circle. They will talk to them before, kind of get the story so there's no surprises. And so we know what to hit on to make them feel heard. And we do this with both what we call the referred student and the harmed party. And then we also bring in 2 youth community members who are people just to speak about how it could affect the community and that big ripple effect that happens with everything, really. We generally have an administrator or an SRO, an officer, and every once in a while we have our team leader, who is Laura Snyder.
Okay, thank you. Emma, one of the things that Emily said that I think was really important is this idea of being heard, and it seems like with the work that BYBA has done in getting the discrimination policy changed in Boulder Valley will help students who are being harassed because of physical characteristics to be heard more.
Yeah, completely. I think that with this new policy, it gives students the ability to go talk to their teachers about this problem and not be turned away, so that they do feel like there is a safe place to talk about being harassed for something that's not their fault.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I wanted to share is the types of bullying. And so I have a list on this slide that includes physical aggression, social aggression, verbal aggression, intimidation, written aggression, sexual harassment, racial and cultural harassment, and cyberbullying. One of the things that I think has been a growing concern is the incidence of cyberbullying over the last few years. And I shared earlier the percentage of students who felt that they had been electronically bullied. Emily, have you gotten cases where you've had incidents of cyberbullying, and is that harder to work with?
We have definitely gotten cases of cyberbullying. It is a very big thing in our society right now. But we have had a lot that have included cyberbullying. The main thing wasn't cyberbullying, but 28 out of our 48 cases last year had a Facebook component, which means that maybe where the fight was going to be held was decided there, or there was harassment done on Facebook because of the incident.
Huh. How do you track that?
Well, we do ask the students in there, and one of our main things is you have to be honest. You have to be honest so we can know what you're doing. We don't go and we don't track their things because that's kind of that's a personal privacy thing. But we do make sure that they are telling the truth, and if it does get to school officials and they do hear about it, they definitely tell us that there was an online component.
So for students who have an online component to their bullying or their harassment, I know that for me, my tendency, if somebody sent me something electronic, I would want to delete it right away, because why would I want to keep it with me? Would you recommend that they save that, though?
I would definitely recommend that they save that. And if you want to have proof, it would be great to save it so you can not only have it as evidence, but just so it's there, and so you can look back and really track what's going on.
That's really good advice. Thank you. So one of the next pieces I'm going to go to is, what are some of the differences in terms of conflict? So what does normal conflict look like compared to bullying conflict? And even though it's really, really teeny on the screen, the source for this is the Bully Proof in Your School curriculum. And so, and you can see that, again, the bullying behavior in terms of conflict really looks at the imbalance of power, repeated negative actions, that there's a tendency to look for a strong emotional reaction, attempt to gain power, that there's no remorse and there's no effort to solve problems. Whereas under normal conflict, it happens between equal power with people who are friends. It's occasional, accidental. It's not serious or as serious. Conflict probably feels really serious to the people who are in it at the time. There's no seeking power or attention, and there's remorse involved, that the people involved take responsibility and that there's efforts to solve the problems. One of the things that I think is important is the work that Emily, that you guys do with students in your school, because the Bully Proof curriculum talks about the importance of conflict mediation programs or peer conflict mediators, that it can work well for normal bullying situations, but you need different tools and techniques. I mean, not normal conflict situations, sorry about that, but that you would need different tools or techniques in bullying situations.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We find that with a lot, we do have a way that we run our circles, and it's really so we can make sure that we hear both sides, because there is always a reason why the bully did something. There's always a reason that the person was instigated, and there have been many times when we've had two referred students and they both feel like harmed parties because they were both victimized in some way, and but the whole process is to really bring into light all of the feelings that they had throughout the entire process, so that everybody can look in the other person's eyes and feel the way that they felt, to make sure that everybody in the situation not only knows the truth about what was going on, but also to see why it happened.
I think that's really important to understand why it happened. What has been the results when you've gotten to that point in the circles?
Generally, when we've gotten to the point in the circles where we're coming to the resolution, people usually feel you do see a change in them. You see that they have realized what they've done. They've realized this big ripple effect, and they know how big of an issue it is. Like, it may feel like some silly little thing that happened in the hallway, but the more that they look at it, the more that they realize that what they did really impacted a lot of people, and how that their actions can really go out. And so we have seen a lot of change for the good.
Good, good. And then, so I want to go on next to talking about the difference between teasing and taunting. So in terms of teasing, both parties can tease. It's not intended to hurt the other person. It's meant, I think, to be funny. Although, when you're being teased, I don't think that that's always the case, that you feel like it's supposed to be funny. And it generally stops when one person gets upset. And taunting, again, it's based on that imbalance of power, and it's intended to harm. The idea is the laughter is directed at someone, not with them, and that it goes on even when that one person is feeling hurt as a result of what's happening. The next area is the difference between flirting and sexual bullying. And this didn't come from bully proofing. I found this from the Bully, the Bullied, and the Bystander, Barbara Coloroso's book, because I think one of the things that I've noticed in talking to kids when we've done youth summits and things like that is sometimes there's a not lack of understanding, but sometimes there seems to be fewer boundaries, I think, between what's flirting and sexual behavior, and sometimes that gets misunderstood. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to include this as part of the presentation tonight. So I think the biggest part when you look at this, these columns, and I know it's a lot of text, is that the flirting is meant to be flattering and complimentary. It's meant to be mutual. It's meant for people to have fun together, and it's meant to make the object of the flirting feel desired and wanted. Whereas sexual bullying, again, is one-sided. It has that imbalance of power, and the intent is to express control and domination. And it can continue even when that one person is distressed or upset. And I think that the idea is to reinforce that sense of powerlessness. And the final area of difference that I wanted to look at was one of the things that comes up, I've heard come up is, well, I don't want to tell someone, or I'm worried that it's going to be perceived as tattling, or I'm afraid somebody's not going to take me seriously. Well, I wanted to highlight the difference between tattling and telling. So tattling is harmless. It can be handled by yourself. The behaviors are accidental. And sometimes for tattling, the purpose is to get someone in trouble. But telling is for something that's really important. If it's something that's harmful or dangerous and you need the help of someone else, if you need the help of an adult, because that behavior is purposeful. And so the purpose behind telling is to keep people safe. And I think that that's one of the things that we hope that the policies that we have in the schools do is to help keep students safe. And I know we talked earlier about adding physical characteristics to the discrimination policy in BVSD. And I think that the idea behind that is so that students will feel like they can go and talk to someone.
Yeah, completely. I think that without it, I've heard of people who are scared to go tell people, and they don't, because in the past, maybe some teachers haven't taken it seriously, and they were just like, oh, brush it off, you'll move on. But it's something that really hurts people.
And I think that is also, that's an important piece of bullying. It's something that hurts people.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
Do you want to add anything, Emily?
Well, it is, physical appearance is a very big thing. We don't touch on it as much in restorative justice because we deal with such a wide range of cases, but physical appearance is a very apparent thing in high schools. I mean, it's what some people base their friends off of. It's what some people base anything off of, really, and it's just, it is a very big, harmful thing.
I had the opportunity to see that Anderson Cooper 360 show on bullying last week, which was pretty intense in some pieces. And one of the things that they did was they highlighted some clips from the documentary, The Bully. And some of the clips that I noticed that they highlighted, and some of the students that they had on the Anderson Cooper show, were there because primarily they were being bullied because they were different in some way, whether through their physical appearance or in some other way, that they were bullied because they were different. So how do we make it okay for students to feel different and feel that they can be confident in the person that they are?
I think it's a really hard thing, especially in the world that we're growing up in today, because society does pressure us to be a certain way. I think that part of what Boulder Youth Body Alliance does in telling people that they are along with everyone else is having the same problem, and I think that really that's the first step, is getting people on the same level and knowing that they're not alone in what they're feeling, and that everyone is different, and we aren't, we all look special for a certain reason and stuff like that.
Well, we bring that into our circles a lot. I mean, we do have a lot of cases where we do have some racial cases, and to kind of balance out that power, we do bring in everybody that we possibly can. We have a lot of Latinos on our team, and we do bring them in, and we bring in as many people as we can to make the circle feel diverse. We do have a balance of power between adult and teen, and we do have some male and some female, and we just make sure that everybody feels equal in our circles.
I think that that's really important, that part about feeling equal, because as we've talked about, the whole bullying piece is really related to that imbalance of power as well. One of the things I think is really important to talk about is bystanders, and what are the roles that bystanders can play. I think it's tough. One of the things that I saw in one of the clips from the Bully project, or from the documentary The Bully, was a student being bullied on a school bus, and the students on the bus with him were yelling encouragement, or were just ignoring the situation. I thought I saw one student say, leave him alone. But it's interesting how often you see that, even in the new Spider-Man movie that came out, which I also watched over the weekend. There was an incidence of that as well. And I think that that's really tough, because when you're a bystander, the research has shown that there are 4 different roles a bystander can play, which is an assistant, where you join in the bullying, as a reinforcer, where you're giving positive feedback to the bully, and that may be laughing at the bullying behavior in some way, as an outsider, to stay away or do nothing, and then as a defender, to do something to stop the bullying. One of the things that I saw on the Anderson Cooper show was that for students who intervene, their friends are more likely to intervene as well, if they know a student who has intervened in a bullying situation.
Yeah, we do see that a lot. We have seen all of those types of bystanders in every possible way, really. And there are a lot of times when we'll have multiple people in the circle who were referred to the circle because they were bystanders. And it's very difficult sometimes to kind of get some things out, because usually it is a friend, and sometimes the friend is just trying to defend their friend, and it's a very difficult thing sometimes to be a bystander, because that person who intervenes is, it takes a lot of courage, but also the person who is is going on and encouraging them. It's very difficult to really stop that.
I think that that's one of the things too, that for bystanders is not knowing what to do, not knowing how to intervene, because one of the things that we talk about is, well, why don't bystanders get involved? Why are they bystanders? Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, including fear of retaliation, afraid that they might make things worse, afraid of their social status, or they don't believe that adults will help, or they don't believe that it's their responsibility. But I mean, I think it seems like that that culture of people, bystanders, influences the culture and the climate of the school or the organization that you're in. And I know that sometimes it can be a little difficult to be the person who speaks up. But clearly both of you have joined organizations and are spending time speaking out. Whether it's about body image and physical characteristics, or as part of the restorative justice circles, you've both taken that step to speak out, which I think is a really important step. And I'm curious as to how you were able to take that first step to speak out.
For me, I think speaking out is a huge part of changing the problems. And when I'm so passionate about the problem as physical appearance, I really want that to be changed. And so speaking out is the first step to do that and the most important part. So I, just from my own personal experiences, I wanted to do that to help other people feel confident in themselves.
Great.
It's also a very personal thing for me. This is kind of the field that I want to go in when I'm older, and so having all this experience is really great, but it's also just, it's nice to be a part of my school community, and not just a part of it, but like a positive part of it, and helping people get past their problems in a positive way, and teaching them what it really means to respect each other and make sure that everybody feels equal. And it's just really great to speak out for those people who either can't speak out or are afraid to speak out.
I think that's great. I put a quote on this next page that was really directed for parents, but I think it really highlights what you both have said about that importance of being able to play a role and help somebody and see those results in terms of how your school community interacts and what your school community is like. So that as parents, if we're able to help kids get to that place or encourage students that we know to step up big and small, it'll mean a lot, I think, to the students in the community and the students that are feeling supportive. So I wanted to sort of shift a little bit and talk about some of the signs that a child might be being bullied. And this comes from stopbullying.gov. There's a national effort, and I think that folks may have seen some of the press releases in terms of the work that President and Mrs. Obama are doing around the effort of bullying. And so this is a federal website, and a number of agencies are putting information there as well. And so the signs that a child is being bullied include unexplainable injuries, lost or destroyed personal items, feeling sick or having frequent headaches or stomach aches, changes in eating habits, changes in attitudes towards school, changes in sleeping patterns, sudden loss of friends or avoidance of social situations, feelings of helplessness or decreased self-esteem, and some self-destructive behaviors. That's not to say that every single one of these needs to be occurring or that something else might be going on in their lives, but that these are some of the signs that a child is being bullied. Signs that a child is bullying include getting into physical or verbal fights, having friends that bully, being increasingly aggressive, frequent trips to the principal's office, unexplained money or belongings, blaming others for problems, not accepting responsibility for actions, and are sometimes competitive and worry about reputation or popularity. So, to me, the big question is, what do we do if we know of kids who are being bullied, or as parents, we want to protect our own kids? So what do we do? I think the most important thing, and I think that that's also what your organizations do, Emily and Emma, is listen. You listen to kids. You focus on that individual person. Make sure that the person who's being bullied knows that it's not their fault. And understanding that if kids are being bullied, they might struggle with talking about it, but it's important to find a safe place to talk about it. The restorative justice circles, I think, are a really good place in terms of working together to resolve the situation of bullying, to be persistent. And I thought this was interesting because I think that sometimes as parents, our first instinct when if we hear our child is being bullied, is to say, well, stand up to them, fight back. or ignore it and it'll just go away. But that's not necessarily the case. You don't want to tell a child to ignore bullying, and you don't necessarily want to tell a child to fight back. Because ignoring it, if you tell somebody to ignore the situation, then you're not recognizing the impact that it has on them. And if you encourage them to fight back, then that escalates that situation. The other thing I thought was interesting is to not contact any other parents who are involved, because I think that there may be too much emotion involved in that circumstance, and it would be good to have a third party involved and to continue to follow up. I'd like to ask if there's anything from your experiences that you would like to add to this list in terms of how to support kids who have been bullied.
Not really adding to it, but just emphasizing the listening part. I mean, that's the biggest thing that always gets people in our circles to open up and listen to us and really understand why it's so important that they're there, because us listening to them and us hearing their story and us making them feel like they're important is really one of the only things that gets them hooked on it and really understanding and cooperating.
Exactly. I feel really similarly. I think that giving kids a voice and that voice will be listened is a huge part of people feeling confident about themselves, and that this is a problem and that they're not alone in this.
Okay. So one of the last points that I wanted to make, and this again follows with what you both said, is to show kids that bullying's taken seriously, that bullying is being taken seriously. And that if you're addressing bullying behavior in someone who bullies, work with them, like you said earlier, to understand the reasons he or she bullied, to understand what that impact is. Use consequences to teach. Involve the child who bullied in making amends, and I think that's part of what the Restorative Justice Circle does, right? Mm-hmm. And avoid strategies that don't work or have negative consequences, and then continue to provide follow-up. I know that in Boulder County we have several resources that are available. We have the Longmont
Community Justice Program.
I got it totally backwards. Longmont Community Justice Program. I was going to say Longmont Justice Community, and I knew that wasn't working out right. There's the Prevention Intervention Program in the schools. They are at all of the high schools, and I think in a number of middle schools. There are organizations like the one that Emma is part of, the Peer Educator Group, Boulder Youth Body Alliance. There's the Peers Building Justice, which is a partnership between MESA and Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence. I think that there's also adults in the schools if someone doesn't feel comfortable talking to their parent. The online resources that I found useful were kidsareworthit.com, which is Barbara Coloroso's website. The bullyproject.com has some incredible toolkits. They have a parent action toolkit. They have a cyber prevention and intervention tips for families, and a social emotional learning toolkit that I downloaded. And there were a number of them, tips for parents on talking to their kids, and they also had information on Spanish, or in Spanish. Oh my gosh. So before I thank our sponsors, I just wanted to give Emma and Emily the opportunity for any final comments this evening.
I am just happy that we were able to be here tonight for me to be able to speak on behalf of restorative justice, because I really believe in it. It's a really great program. I wish it was used more around where we are getting our word out there, and it's just really great to be able to be on here and be able to spread the word.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank you again for inviting me or Boulder Youth Body Alliance onto the show, because this new bullying policy is really important to me, and getting the word out, and so that kids know that this is a problem. And I'm part of our anti-bullying group in Boulder Youth Body Alliance, and so we're doing several things to get the word out about this, and this is just another step.
Great, thank you. I know that we didn't cover a lot of tips in terms of parents in the audience, and one of the things that I just wanted to share with you before we close out are some things just to keep in mind. when you're talking to your child about bullying, to be matter of fact about it, to be straightforward. Make sure that you're actively listening, so that shows your child that their concerns are being heard, so that you hear their thoughts, their ideas, and they know that their feelings matter, and that the message you give is clear and not punctuated with mixed signals. So you may want to think about keeping it simple, being brief, being positive, and then replaying the message that you heard from your child, and make sure that your child understands that he or she does not deserve to be bullied. Nobody does. So with that, I think we're going to close out this evening, and I would like to go ahead and thank our sponsors with the Boulder Valley School District and Channel 22, Boulder Psychological Services, the Daily Camera, Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance, and the Parent Engagement Network. And thank you both for being here this evening.
Growth returns to follow ground, but I know what's churning underneath the snow, and I love my baby and we've miles to go. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Be with me. We'll beat this, can't you see? So wait a while, winter time.